Hello and welcome back. My name is Rosie,
And my name is Paul.
and this is
It's
Sinister. Today we have such a tragic case that involves young girls aged 8 to 10 not only being murdered but also sexually assaulted. So that's the trigger warning now for those that reasonably do not want to listen to this episode and hear the details of that. Granted, it's from the past, like it's from before DNA and things. Like there is no detail, I will not express any details of the sexual assault in any capacity because there are none. Now, today we are discussing a case from 1977, Oklahoma, in the United States. And this is known as the Girl Scout murders, which to this day is technically classed as an unsolved case. So let me tell you this story, which takes place at a Girl Scout summer camp named Camp Scott. So Camp Scott was located in Mayes County near the small town of Locust Grove in Oklahoma. The camp was situated on about 300 acres of wooded land, and it was a super popular camp for local Girl Scouts aged from, I believe, 7 to 17. So between those ages, they could go to this camp. They had lots of exciting activities like swimming, hiking, arts, and like typical campy things, campfire gatherings, things like that. Plus, it seemed like a fun way to meet other people with similar outdoorsy interests. This camp, though, was extremely open. There were supposedly gates, but these gates weren't keeping anyone or anything out.
But it wasn't enclosed area.
It was not in an enclosed area.
Access.
The public had complete access, really. There was like supposed to be fencing and gates. No. There was no one being kept in or out. Like, it wouldn't even keep in the young children and stuff, you know? Really just not safe.
And people used to actually send their kids at the age of 7 to this camp.
Yeah. At this time that we're going to talk about, the youngest girl was 8 at the camp, but still, yeah. Also the 70s. I know that doesn't make it any better. I'm the first to say I think this camp was completely incompetent. Like, it's absolutely disgusting. We'll get into these things. Like, in the 70s, I guess people weren't really expecting bad things to happen as well.
Yeah, but I suppose that was a time there was a lot more bad things happening.
There probably were a lot more bad things happening, but people probably just didn't really know about them. So sometime around April 1977, so this is 2 months before the camp opened, Camp Scott held an on-site training session for the camp counsellors. During this session, one of the counsellors discovered their tent had been ransacked. And she'd brought donuts from home in a container, and the donuts were all taken, but in the container was a handwritten note which in capital letters said, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls." Unfortunately, the camp director believed this to be some type of prank and threw the note away, not informing anybody else about it or bringing any attention to it.
So that kind of a warning sign.
That's exactly what I would think. Well, later, like when parents did find out about this note, they said they wished they'd known, because prank or not, they probably would have decided not to send their child there just in case. And also, they thought it was their own decision to decide if their child should be there safely.
Of course.
But regardless, this note was just thrown away, not given off to any like authorities or anything like that to be informed about or investigate themselves.
And who'd say found the note?
It was just a camp counsellor. But she handed it off to, like, the supervisor, like the camp director, and the camp director decided to ignore it, and I'd say told the counsellor not to tell anyone about it, given that this wasn't common knowledge.
Okay.
So then, less than 2 months later, and 1 week before the June camp session opened, there was a flap cut from one of the tents, and the dining hall was burgled on separate occasions. Again, these things weren't shared publicly, and again, I think it's a parent's right to make an informed decision on if they think it's safe for their child to attend that camp. Like, now there's like 3 different occasions that the camp director knows of. Also, too, if this camp can so easily be robbed and people can so easily come in and out from the public, would you want your child there?
Well, no, basically not.
No. So come June 12th, 1977, and Camp Scott opens for the summer season. There were 140 young girls attending from this day for the week, along with 30 adult staff members, like the counselors that were there to oversee the camp activities and the safety of the children. Now, the layout of this camp is really strange to me. I do keep telling myself that it was a different time, but I do just find this generally concerning. The camp was divided into several sleeping areas, and I believe they were divided by age, but I could be wrong because there is not enough sources that actually confirm that part. But the unit that we're going to be talking about is the Kiowa unit. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That was the unit for the younger girls attending camp, so the youngest of this group. And the setup was one counselor tent followed by 7 of the children's tent in a line, right? I know it's hard, but just try and picture this. So not like there was a counselor's tent and like the children's tents were surrounding it, which would probably be the safest option. In a line all the way to the end, 7 following tents, and there was no counselor in the tents with the girls. It was just the counselor tents and then the girls' tents. Up to tent 6, they're all in like a straight line, but tent number 7 was partially obscured by the camp's showers. So in a sense, that tent was more isolated, and it was 80 metres away from the counsellor's tent.
80 metres?
80 metres. Which I know doesn't sound like all that much, but when you're thinking about the idea of like a 7-8-year-old girl being in that tent, that's quite far.
Yeah.
And it's obscured. I would be very upset to hear that my child was that far away from any adult supervision. And then each counsellor's given a tent to watch, but they're not actually there monitoring that tent in any sense. It's just very strange.
There are 20 counsellors in one tent.
Well, no, in each unit, they're probably divided across different units. So because this was the day that everyone was getting dropped off, this first day at camp, it wasn't like a day of camp activities. They're all starting the following day, all the activities.
Settling in.
There's settling in, there's getting to know your new tent mates, girls you've never met before, things like that. So I think the day was just kind of like, get there, get settled into your tent. Then they had dinner, and then after dinner they were sent off to their tents to write letters to their family, but on the way a thunderstorm started. So it was a really stormy first night here. Just to set that kind of scene, that storm went on throughout the night. So everyone's gone off to their tent, and all 4 tents have 4 little girls in them, apart from tent number 7, the isolated tent, which only has 3 girls in it. So in this tent, we have 8-year-old Laurie Farmer, 9-year-old Michelle Gousset, and 10-year-old Doris Denise Milner, who went by the name Denise. So let me introduce these girls to you a little bit. Laurie was the youngest at the camp. She was the 8-year-old and said to be extremely intelligent and mature. I'll read out her letter that she wrote in a minute, but the grammar and everything was so good. You would not believe an 8-year-old wrote that. Her mother stated that Laurie enjoyed reading and playing outside with her sisters and brother. Not long prior to this camp, the Scouts had gone to a school recruiting young girls to join Girl Scouts, and Laurie had school friends joining, so she wanted to join as well, so her parents signed her up. And when they found out about this opportunity to go on a camping trip, which she really wanted to do, she'd never gotten to go on any trips or anything like that, they wanted to sign her up for that as well. But Laurie had the choice between 2 different camps. So there was Camp Scott, and she also had the option to go to the YMCA camp, and Laurie couldn't make up her mind, so her mother Sherry decided for her, deciding that she would go to Camp Scott and deciding that that was the particular week she would go as well. Unfortunately, Sherry is forever haunted by that decision, saying she has to live with that decision for the rest of her life. Not that she could have possibly known what events would take place, but I do understand that being really hard sitting on your shoulders. So the letter that Laurie wrote to her family that first night read, "Dear Mum and Dad and Misty and Joe and Chad and Kathy, we're just getting ready to go to bed. It's 7:45. We're at the beginning of a storm and having a lot of fun. I've met 2 new friends, Michelle Gousset and Denise Milner. I'm sharing a tent with them. It started raining on the way back from dinner. We're sleeping on cots. I couldn't wait to write. We're all writing letters now because there's hardly anything else to do. With love, Laurie. That was the letter she wrote that night while the thunderstorm was going on.
Yeah, that's so that she was happy where she was.
She seemed really happy.
In the middle of a thunderstorm. Camped out and
camping, but she just made 2 friends. She seems so excited for like a week of activities ahead. Then we have 9-year-old Michelle Gousset. And Michelle was returning to this camp for the 2nd year in a row, having had so much fun the previous year, and was looking forward to spending a week in the wilderness. She had made it clear that she was going to miss her family while away for the week, but that she was excited to spend time with fellow Girl Scouts. Michelle was an avid reader and really enjoyed her plants. She wanted to make sure her mother looked after her plants every day while she was gone. That was the big thing she stressed to her mum before leaving. Like, you look after my plants. And for a 9-year-old, I can't imagine a 9-year-old having such an interest in plants. I think that's so cute.
I suppose so, if she's interested in the outdoors.
That's true too. Outdoors and plants and things like that. The letter that she wrote during the thunderstorm was actually to her Aunt Karen, and she wrote, "Dear Aunt Karen, how are you? I am fine. I am writing from camp. We can't go outside because it's storming. Me and my tent mates are in the last tent in our unit. My tent mates are Denise Milner and Laurie Farmer. My room is in shades of purple. Love, Michelle." I think it's so sweet how they each send out their new friend's full name. Like their family members are going to know them. And then we have the oldest of the 3, but still only a baby, 10-year-old Denise. Denise was excited but a little anxious to go to camp. I mean, she's only 10, so that's super reasonable. She had kind of decided she didn't want to go and that she wouldn't like it, but her mother did push her, wanting her to get out of her comfort zone a little bit and encouraged Denise's independence. She wanted that out of her. I think Denise was more of a shy, kept to herself kind of child, and she really wanted to push her out a little bit more, but let Denise know that she only needed to call for her mum to come and bring her back home. Like, if Denise's mum found out Denise wasn't happy, she'd come and get her. Not an issue. Denise had never been to camp before, but she'd sold enough Girl Scout cookies to be able to go to the camp with friends. But at the last minute, her friends backed out, and Denise ended up going not knowing anyone there. But she did make friends, which she mentions in her letter. Denise was a straight-A student who had been accepted into a prestigious middle school in Tulsa, which was a selective school for academically gifted children. So Denise also must have been quite exceptionally intelligent. Denise also enjoyed watching TV and playing with her younger sister, Kathleen. Denise's letter was a bit more upsetting than the other 2 girls, and it reads, quote, "Dear Mum, I don't like camp, it's awful. The first day it rained. I have 3 new friends named Glenda, Laurie, and Michelle. Michelle and Laurie are my roommates. Mum, I don't want to stay at camp for 2 weeks. I want to come home and see Cassie and everybody. Your loving child, Denise Milner."
She wasn't happy. She was going to give it a try, but she wasn't happy though.
Yeah.
She wasn't knocky from the first day.
No, and it sounds like it was the thunderstorm kind of ruined it, and she's probably just a bit overwhelmed. There's so much going on. And they've just been sent to their tents after dinner because it was storming. That's a shitty way to start a day. That's not exciting anyone.
Yeah, I was thinking this storm there would have kept them all closer and more more guarded.
You would, wouldn't you?
Especially young kids, first time in the wild.
Yeah. Do you know what they do instead? I am jumping the gun a little bit. They turn off the lights so there's no lights on outside and leave them all to their own devices. They just left them all in the dark. Meanwhile, there's children 80 metres away from the counsellor's tent and they're in the dark. They can't even see. That's crazy to me. I find her note super heartbreaking that she was already wanting to go home, but how amazing that for someone who would do her own thing, she'd already made 3 friends. But that's how the girls spent the first night, in the tent, in a thunderstorm, writing letters and getting to know their tent mates. So counsellors turned out all the lights around 8 or 8:30, leaving everyone in absolute darkness from then on for the rest of the night. Just pure black in a wooded area. I think this is so dumb and it makes me so mad. Where girls are so far away. If they need anything, imagine one little girl just needs something and she can't even go find it. They need the toilet, they can't find it. What are they trying to do? Save on electricity.
Yeah, it's this Girl Scouts, but this is kind of army training stuff,
For a 7-year-old, it's the same conditions for everyone from 7 to 17. That's madness to me. So there was said to be a little noise coming from tent 7 after 9 p.m, but not enough to cause alarm for the counsellors. That I do understand in a sense, because it's the first night, girls will be chatting or playing, it's an exciting time. I don't think you can be overbearing, and it wasn't concerning noise at that time. It sounded like the girls settling for the night. Around 10 p.m, the camp counsellors did their rounds for the night, checking around the area and that the girls were all right, but they didn't explicitly go into the tents to check that each child was okay, and because they didn't hear anything unusual from tent 7 or any other tents at the time, they didn't really go in and check.
Would you just do a kind of a
Head check? Yeah. Just double check.
Any bears or anything out there sleeping a few of the
Exactly. That's one thing you can actually be concerned about this time, bears. They're in a wooded area. Camp staff went to sleep thinking that everything appeared normal. Around 1:30 a.m, a counsellor named Carla Wilhite was woken by noise coming from the woods surrounding the tents. She described the sound as a low guttural moaning, so she got up to investigate, apparently, walking down a path that led to the main part of the camp following the noise. So this was going towards the showers. She shone her torch in the direction the noise was coming from, but with her shining the light, the noise stopped and she couldn't see anything. She stayed there for a minute looking, but the noise didn't continue, so she turned around to go back to bed. But with the torch no longer shining in that direction, the noise started again. Carla turned back around and started walking towards the noise, going further into the woods. But again, the noise stopped and she couldn't see anything. Deciding it must have been some type of animal, Carla returned to her tent to sleep. She said she continued hearing that noise as she was falling asleep.
I suppose you were out in the woods, you were going to hear noises. There's going to be trees, there's going to be branches, there's going to be animals.
There are, but like a low guttural moaning.
Animals can make all queer different sound noises, especially by night.
You know what I would do? Get other counsellors and actually go search. I wouldn't have gone out there on my own in the first place. Imagine just coming across a bear.
Well, yeah.
So Carla sleeps through, and around 6 in the morning, she gets up and goes to the camp showers, following the same path that she was on the night before. Here, Carla noticed multiple sleeping bags piled up next to a tree. As she got closer, she saw what she thought was a young girl sleeping beside the sleeping bags on the ground. She's there first thinking, like, why is this child sleeping outside? But on closer inspection, she discovered that it was Denise's body, and it was very apparent that Denise had passed away. The issue here is, it's early days of camp, and the counsellors probably don't know which girl is which, who was in what tent. Like, she probably had no idea who this girl kind of was. So the counsellors altogether start searching the tents and doing a head count of the girls. And unfortunately, the counsellor who searched tent number 7 found a completely empty tent that didn't even have the sleeping bags in it. Every other tent had 4 little girls sleeping in them, and all girls were accounted for, minus Laurie, Michelle, and Denise. So the counsellors conducted a search for the other 2 little girls, and by around 7 a.m, all 3 bodies had been found along this small path in a wooded area less than 50 metres from their cabin. Michelle and Laurie still in their sleeping bags, and all children were partially undressed. This would have been the area Carla searched the previous night thinking there was an animal.
Right, yeah.
Police were brought onto the scene, and all of the other children at Camp Scott were put on buses and taken home after questioning from police. But because police questioning with the children wasn't getting anywhere, off they went. I suppose that was partially for their own safety, but more so for police to be able to search the area and there not be children witnessing this happening and disturbing the crime scene. All 3 of the little girls were found, as I said, partially undressed with their clothing items near their bodies and had very obvious signs of blunt force trauma, likely from like a large log or something like that they had determined, and one had strangulation marks, indicating quite a violent attack. And Michelle's sleeping bag had semen in it, indicating that there was some type of sexual assault involved.
There'd be a lot more noise made.
We will get into that and might cover a little bit why there might not have been screaming. Near the bodies was also a large red like spotlight type of flashlight, you know, like the thick spotlight ones, that had been modified. So the front of it was covered in a black plastic bag type of material with a pinhole in it, so that when the flashlight was turned on, it would only shed a really small beam of light. And the plastic bag type of material was stuck on with masking tape. I'm telling you this for later. And there was also newspaper stuffed up against the batteries in the torch to stop them rattling around or making any noise. So whoever made this flashlight was premeditating a crime.
They had planned.
Yeah. Some sources also said that there was a smudged fingerprint on the lens that was too smudged to ever provide positive identification, even after the progression of DNA analysis. But this wasn't in enough sources for me to completely believe that it was true. So from what investigators could gather at the time, Lori and Michelle had been murdered in their tents while they were asleep. So that would have been the lack of screaming from them. And then their bodies were taken out to a path later. But it appeared like Denise had either been carried or made to walk to the location the bodies were later found, because it seemed she had lost her life where she was found on the path and her blood was not found in the tent. Denise was also found with her hands bound behind her back with a combination of small white rope and tape. The other two girls were not tied up in any way, but it is probably likely because Michelle and Laurie were attacked while sleeping. Meanwhile,
so Denise could have witnessed. Denise, is it?
Yeah,
she could have witnessed all this happening.
She could have either witnessed it or woken up, towards the end of an attack or before it was her time to be attacked or something like that. It's absolutely horrific to think of. I pray that Laurie and Michelle were asleep when they died. As horrific as it is, they wouldn't know any better. Denise died at the scene. She either had to walk there herself or was carried there, which is just horrific.
Yeah, we said she had to be gagged or some sort.
There was no indication of gagging, but again, you don't know what was going on, what they threatened her with, or anything. It's so scary. A full investigation of the campsite pursued. This was where they found a footprint in blood from a size 9.5 shoe in tent number 7. Unfortunately, though, they later determined that this was likely from a counsellor or doing head counts or something along those lines. Someone's innocently gone in, seen that there's blood, run out, rather than being from the murderer. What this investigation could confirm was that it was a brutal attack, but there were no immediate leads. And given the whole lack of barriers surrounding the camp, it was made clear that this could have been anyone letting themselves into the campgrounds.
It came from anger and also specific entrance.
Nope. So police were searching while questioning the children and the camp staff, and camp staff ended up disclosing that there had been some strange behaviour around the camp leading up to this night. It was confirmed by counsellors there were multiple reports of suspicious individuals seen around the campgrounds in the previous weeks, but nothing concrete came from this information. They couldn't actually determine who these individuals were or anything like that.
But they still carried on to have the
camp continue. It's disturbing, isn't it? All these things that happened. Now, the local director of Girl Scouts called the girls' families to inform them that an accident had occurred and their child had died in the night. The families didn't find out from this phone call that it was a violent murder or that other children were involved. Most families had to find out from the news how their child died. The nature of their child's death, should have been discussed prior to them witnessing it on the news. Bare minimum, you'd think at least police would have gone to their home to tell them.
The parents of the 3 girls that were murdered?
Yeah.
Out of the news.
From the news. Well, at least one did, but all parents said that no one ever told them. Apparently it was the news.
But...
So the camp had called saying there was an accident in the night, that their child had passed away. And I don't know what police were doing, whether they, why they didn't tell them. I guess too, that would have hit the news so quickly. Imagine that day, it's on the news. I don't know, I don't know. Regardless, I think that's sickening. Laurie's father later discovered that the families were the last to be called after the camp's insurance company and attorney, and the camp received massive backlash for the fact that they called the insurance company and attorneys first. In following days, a local resident was squirrel hunting on some property near the campsite and came across a cave. Police investigated the cave, discovering newspaper and a roll of masking tape, both found to be the exact ones used on the flashlight found at the scene. The newspaper was missing the pages found inside the torch, and the masking tape's edges lined up perfectly with the tape on the torch. They were both exact matches, it was definitely the same one, so this was the killer's cave. In the cave, they also found broken glasses and a beige vinyl case. When the counsellors were previously interviewed, it was made clear that one counsellor had glasses stolen from her tent, and they ended up being her glasses. So the killer has also stolen from the counsellor's tent while doing this. But I don't know if it was the same. I don't know. It's very confusing. They also found 2 photographs of women in this cage. Now, I'm not going to lie. I'm super confused on how the investigators did this, but they were able to link these photos to a man named Gene Leroy Hart, concluding that he would have been able to print these photos off while he was working in a printing room of a prison, while in prison. I haven't been able to find this explained properly, so I'm really confused on how they could link these girls to him, but they could link them to him. Jean Leroy Hart would have been 33 at this time and was a native of Locust Grove. He had a history of violence against women, particularly sexual violence. In 1966, he had abducted 2 pregnant women from a parking lot of a nightclub in Tulsa, Oklahoma at gunpoint. He then drove them both out to the middle of nowhere, tied their hands behind their backs, and repeatedly sexually assaulted them. When he was finished with the 2 pregnant women, he covered them in brush and left them to die.
Covered what?
Like brush, like random little leaves and stuff off the ground.
Oh.
He was found guilty of this horrific crime, and he admitted to it. And he was sentenced to prison. I'm unsure how long he was initially sentenced to, but he was somehow paroled after only 2 years for doing that. Like, I keep saying it's another time, but this is, like, actually dystopian.
Gosh, like this was like 50 years ago.
Yeah. I know. Like, how concerning is that?
I think they'd probably death penalty back then.
Well, that's it too. Like, yeah. I've been saying that. For the most part, like, rape even a crime?
But are they white or black women?
Well, I'm not sure, but he was Native American, so I don't know. It never explicitly stated.
Yeah, no, it's this like.
I know it's.
Back them times, there was no
sick stuff going on.
Mm.
I know. So while on parole, Jean was caught committing burglary and sent back to finish his previous sentence. Then, in 1973, Jean was being transferred from the prison he was being held in to Mays County Jail, and from there he managed to escape. He was found rather quickly and brought back, again escaping the jail. I know.
What a slippery fucker, aren't they?
That, but like how incompetent are the guards?
I know, it's like 50 years ago. I was trying fucking horse and carriage drawing.
It's terrible, isn't it? Another inmate named Larry Dry escaped with him, but he was found a short while later while Jean remained on the loose. However, Larry, total snitch, was able to reveal to police some information about Jean. Larry said that while on the run with Jean, Jean would cover a flashlight in plastic or paper and make a pinhole in it so they could move without making a lot of light and making it too obvious. Which I don't feel like this would have been the most common thing to do. I'd never heard of someone doing this before. Like, I know when you think about it, it's like basic thought, but like, this surely isn't a common thing for multiple criminals to do, you know?
I suppose, though, it don't give a big glare. It just gives you a guide where you're going.
A little beam, yeah, instead of making it super obvious where you are. But, like, surely that's not the most common thing for criminals to do either.
I suppose it is, if you're going to get caught in the dark.
Okay.
Or be seen travelling around the dark.
But still, I think it's like a very niche thing.
It's what you can hide straight away. You just dip it down.
I don't love how easy this is coming to your brain.
We used to go dazzling when we were younger.
What's dazzling?
The kitchen rabbits.
No, and you shock them with the light.
No, they come to life.
Oh, and then what do you do?
Carry on with the story.
Oh, Paul. He also said that Jean had bad eyesight and would often steal glasses. Also, that Jean had a history of using rope and cord to bind victims. So now there are a few things linking Jean to this crime in a sense. Like,
because he wore glasses and he used rope.
Because he regularly stole glasses from crime scenes, and glasses were stolen from this crime scene. The rope and also the covering the light and making a pinhole in it. That's 3 things now. Like, the odds are against Jean at this point.
And Jean wasn't one of the counselors, huh?
No. In 1977, Jean had been on the run from police for 4 years and had been at large the entire time, with police supposedly trying to find him the entire time. Authorities obtained a warrant for Jean's arrest in relation to Laurie, Michelle, and Denise's murder. So a manhunt pursued for Jean. This unfortunately lasted like 10 months until April 6th, 1978, when he was found and arrested. He was actually found living in a remote cabin in the area surrounding the camp.
10 months to find him.
Yep. I'm telling you, some police work. His trial occurred in March 1979, with the local sheriff publicly declaring that he was 1000% certain that Hart was guilty. That's Jean. This case was pretty much viewed as solved at the time. Like, everyone was like, this case is solved. The family, everyone thought that he was the man. Now, one main issue here was that the trial was taking place in Mays County, where Jean was a native local and either related to or friends with the vast majority of the town's population. So in Jean's eyes, this was the best place to stand trial because so many people were already on his side, thinking that the police were just being unfair towards him because of his history of abuse, violent sexual abuse, but whatever. It was the most biased place in favor for his trial kind of thing. It should have been done elsewhere to make it fair, somewhere where they didn't know him. Plus, a lot of the evidence was circumstantial, given DNA analysis wasn't as advanced as it is today. So Jean Leroy Hart was acquitted of all 3 counts of murder on March 30th, 1979, after the jury unanimously returned a verdict of not guilty. But he still needed to serve the remainder of his sentence for his previous convictions, and given the jail escape and burglary charges on top of the initial charge of kidnapping and sexually assaulting the 2 pregnant women, he had 305 years left on his 308-year sentence. But no, 308-year sentence is a very long sentence. So regardless of if he was getting sentenced for that crime or found guilty for that crime, the people that felt like he was guilty, at least they kind of got that little sense of he was going to serve 308 years. That's a lot of years. So 2 years later, it was 2 years after the murders, not 2 years later. While serving his sentence, Jean had been exercising, lifting weights and jogging in the exercise yard, and an hour later he collapsed and died of a heart attack. He never really served any of his sentence. It's kind of bullshit.
Yeah, that's the most natural ways to die.
Yeah. He didn't suffer in prison for years and years and years. He just exercised and then dropped, which sucks.
Yeah, it's kind of much justice in that.
No. So Laurie and Denise's family later went on to sue the Magic Empire Council, which I believe was the original Girl Scouts Council, in charge of all that, and its insurer for $5 million US, which I think is over $14 million US today. This was in 1985. And they were alleging negligence. So due to the threatening note left and the fact that their children's tent was nearly 80 metres from the counsellor's tent, unfortunately, they didn't win this case. I'm not sure how, but they didn't. But not that would have brought their children back. I just think it would have kind of held someone accountable, and hopefully the council would have acted more appropriately in further camps.
We're seeing that the justice system was totally against them from the start.
It really felt like it was. And unfortunately, that's how the family felt for a lot of it too. And they would go on to really advocate for victims' rights and families of victims' rights and things like that, because they felt that this was very unfair throughout the whole thing. Their children should not have died if anyone was acting at all appropriately when they're in charge of 140 children's lives.
Yeah,
I bet the camp director wasn't in a tent after she'd decided that this note was a prank. I bet they went in some tent.
And no never prosecuted or anything after?
No.
Not even brought up for negligence?
They won this suit with the negligence. No one got anything.
Camp Scott was able to carry on again?
Nope. That's the only positive. I'll jump the gun. So, happily, Camp Scott was never reopened after that night, and now it is just abandoned land, and the Magic Council actually had to sell it off because, in little bits, because they were never going to open there again. No one was ever going to send their child there again. Obviously, Girl Scouts is still a thing, and people still go on Girl Scout camps, but that...
more secure areas.
Yeah, that location was completely shut down. And rightly so. And to be honest, after hearing that, I would not send my child to any Girl Scout camp ever, anywhere. Or Boy Scout camp, if that's a thing. Is that a thing? It has to be Boy Scouts.
In this country?
Well, I don't know if in this country. Is Scouts a thing in this country at all?
Probably is, but it wouldn't be like the American thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be either.
Okay.
But probably there was a scouting list. They'd be just meeting a hall every now and then. I don't know.
Yeah, I get you.
I don't think they'd be taking outdoors and camping out.
No, but I just think it's I don't know. These people are so clearly very incompetent. It's not hard to be good at your job, I feel, especially when you have children's lives at risk. So the Gousets never sued, but outwardly spoke out against the Girl Scout Council and were in documentaries sharing how incompetent the council was, and rightly so. But yeah, I guess they just chose not to sue, which also fair because in my eyes, suing doesn't really do anything.
No, but I'd like to see these companies
rot.
taking over the business.
It would have been, to be fair, Camp Scout was. Everyone who worked at Camp Scout would have lost a job, everything, you know?
Yeah, that's what's up. They'd probably be able to get taking on some risks.
Yeah, but this was completely shut down. They would have had a terrible reputation. Imagine having Camp Scott on your resume. So as DNA advances occurred, samples from this case were sent out and tested, such as the semen from the sleeping bag. Over time, samples were able to rule out all other suspects they'd ever had, apart from Gene. He could never be ruled out, but also none could ever say conclusively that he was involved. One hair sample could have been Gene's, but 7,700 Native Americans would have obtained similar results. So there was nothing conclusive from any further testing.
But did Gene actually ever did he plead guilty?
He never confessed, he didn't plead guilty, nothing. He's always denied having any involvement.
And you know problem in pleading guilty to the other two women.
He did, as far as I've seen in anything, he confessed to raping and leaving to die 2 pregnant women, which realistically would have been like 4 attempted murders.
Yeah, so like you think he was going serving 300 years in jail and that he would have no problem.
Yeah. But also there's also the whole, like, is he just such a dirty sociopath that he didn't want anyone's families having that closure? Because there's that too. There's that kind of joy you can get out of it as well.
No, but I say he was kind of felt that would be boasty about his crimes.
Yeah, it's tricky. So even in 2019, testing, Gene's never been ruled out. 2019 testing did further prove a possibility, but it was nothing conclusive. However, there was one issue in 2008 with DNA found on one of the victims' bodies not matching Gene's, and either that's because he straight up was not there, or there was someone else involved as well, and that was their DNA.
And the counsellor that was missing the glasses was
never tested. No, well, they'd all been questioned and everything. None of them were ever found suspects or anything in any way, shape or form. And saying all of that, I do feel like there are many people confident that Gene had something to do with this murder. Also, likely not working alone.
Yeah, like how we want to catch
3 girls. Yeah. And to have 2 not wake up and only 1 wake up, like you would think the noise of hitting 1 would wake the other 2.
There's really traces of drugging or sleeping tablets or...
No, but I guess also too, the 70s, they wouldn't have probably done proper, like, coroner's investigations and things.
Be perfect for anyone that counsellor drug their 3 men there in the tent so far away.
Yeah.
These 3 girls are isolated and that they're perfect target for anyone that counsellors.
But the councils would have also been female. There was semen found.
So were they all female counsellors?
They would have been for a Girl Scout. Yeah, so either he wasn't there or there was someone else involved.
We say like there'd be more than one involved.
You would think. I genuinely believe this is not something you could do on your own. And even if it was just one main person involved, there would have to be like a lookout or something. Like 140 children along this campsite and 30 staff. Like, that's near 200 heads you have to watch. You're going in, 1 out. You're going in on your own to abduct 3, but keeping them by the tent.
Yeah, but like, how do you know there was only 3 shots? It was 4 to most tent, wasn't it?
Yeah. How would they know there was 3 in a tent? But I think it was more just like luck of the draw. That was the last most isolated tent. It was partially obscured.
Yeah, but you keep the farther away tent with the least amount of kids in it.
How dumb is that too? That annoys me.
It's like it was
set up.
Planned from inside.
Yeah, there's that too. They did investigate an inside job. There was speculation that it did seem like someone who knew the camp well and things like that. Nothing's ever come from those investigations.
Yeah, the investigation's kind of a bit lackadaisy.
Oh, of course. Like, I don't feel like you can have an unsolved case that isn't lackadaisy.
But can you get the names of the 30 counsellors up?
No. Do you want to go investigating yourself? You would, wouldn't you? Look at your smirk.
I'm just saying, it's just kind of, we could knock them off one by one.
Carla Wilhite, I know that one. That's it. She does a lot of interviews, actually.
Yeah, but I suppose, look, she's probably 80 or 90, don't she?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, actually, but the last interview she did was years ago.
If her 20s or 30s and her scouts day, she's probably, was it 47 years ago?
Yeah.
48.
I'd say a lot of them would be gone by now. Regardless, this is an unsolved case, and I do feel like a lot of unsolved cases do have very relaxed, like, looking into. I remember the clown killer one where Marlene Warren remember? And it was so obvious the entire time. There was 1,000 indications, and for 30 years it remained unsolved. It's just crazy to me. Anyway, back to this. A lot of the family have done positive things in their children's memories, which is a really amazing thing to do with grief. And I know it's definitely really hard to do amazing things with grief. But Michelle's father, Richard, went on to help the state legislation pass the Oklahoma Victims' Bill of Rights. He also helped found the Oklahoma Crime Victims Compensation Board. And he was an organizer for a support group for parents who lost children. So he did a lot of really positive things to try and help those not go through what he went through. Sadly, though, Michelle, his daughter's death, came one day before their wedding anniversary, and as of 2002, when I last saw them interviewed, he said that they still don't celebrate their wedding anniversary. But in Michelle's memory, they had requested that memorials for Michelle be made in libraries, as she was such an avid reader. And that's so heartbreaking. Lori's mother, Sherry, founded the Oklahoma chapter of Parents of Murdered Children, which is another support group. And she has been a super active advocate for crime victims and their families, because she was so upset by the treatment and feeling heard as a family of a victim, and they had no rights, they couldn't sue. So she was being a really outspoken advocate. She's been amazing. But unfortunately, Denise's mother, Betty, really, really struggled with her daughter's death, rightly so, and as of 2002 was unable to visit her grave. I don't know if she has ever since, but she had never, up to that point, ever visited her child's grave. But she raised her niece in her daughter's memory, just wanting to do something positive. And after 5 years, 5 years after Denise's death, she gave birth to another little girl. But Betty herself has unfortunately stated that she's just not the person she once was, which is super heartbreaking, but also completely understandable. It'll break you.
Yeah, so especially when she was a girl that didn't want to stay in the camp.
Oh, 100%.
But then again, she could be collected 2 or 3 days later once the mother got the letter. She wouldn't have got the letter.
Oh, the mother wouldn't have gotten the letter for ages. And that's even if the camp was sending out the letters. For all we knew, they were going to send the kids home with the letters.
Yeah, it's kind of lackadaisy camp, but you can't blame Jean for it.
Why can you not blame Jean for it?
Well, the evidence is not there to accuse him of it. Like I said, he could be prime suspect, but it's not a shut case.
No, it's not. It's still an open case.
Staying, living, or squatting, or doing anything in this camp or the cave.
No evidence of him being in either spot, but he was definitely living nearby the camp, while he was on the run. And no, he may not have done it. He may not have any involvement in any capacity. He was the strongest suspect, and as far as I'm...
Was it the strongest or easiest?
Potentially both. Potentially just the easiest. The thing is, though, in my eyes, their parents probably find it slightly easier thinking that their child's killer is dead. And I'm super comfortable with them thinking that.
But that's no way to shut a case.
No, it's not. The case is still open. They still investigate. The last DNA tests were done in 2019. They're still looking into the case. And until Jean is either found actually guilty and they actually have DNA evidence against him, they're going to keep focusing on the case until they find whoever's done this. It's a shitty case, and it's the 70s where investigation DNA just wasn't as advanced, and that sucks. But also, too, I feel like there is going to be evidence that gets chucked out in the 70s because they just don't realise that DNA evidence is ever going to become what it is. The footprint, it was never confirmed if that was definitely a counsellor's or maybe not. It was in blood. They just went, it was probably a counsellor's, walked in, stepped in blood, rushed out. That was never confirmed. As far as I'm aware, that wasn't taped up and tested or anything. There was some dodgy things that shouldn't have gone missing in this case.
9.5 size foot.
9, yeah.
What size foot of Jean?
You gotta stop asking these questions.
Why?
Because I don't know. If I knew, I'd have said. And that's what I mean. There is some stuff where it's just clearly dodgy police work. Did they go and measure everyone's foot? Did they cancel a certain counsellor out? Was any of that actually done? And for the most part, I don't think so. I think there are things that we wouldn't let slide and we're not even fucking trained.
What?
Like, we would be investigating the shoe size and you would be there going, and what size is your foot? And measuring it up. And do you have any shoes that match these footprints? Whereas, like, these actual investigators weren't doing that.
Cinderella going with glass fucking foot. Or glass slipper.
But, unfortunately, these trained detectives weren't. It's sad.
And that's just the American way. It is, well, they pick a fella, you're guilty, that's it.
Yeah, but to be fair, we've done cases from Ireland too, where the police work is shoddy as hell.
There is. And look, this case of Sophie La Plantier, they reckon they fucked up big time in that. But it's. So the man is dead now, Bailey.
I know he's never found guilty, but he was so clearly a murderer.
How was he clearly a murderer?
He'd supposedly confessed on numerous occasions while drunk that he fucked up and he went too far with that woman and he shouldn't have killed her. Like, I don't know any innocent people going around confessing to murders on numerous occasions when drunk. Do you? Have you ever confessed to a murder while drunk?
No, not yet.
Don't look at me like that.
Stop recording.
I don't know, that's all. But no, someone was telling me he was in Bellavourney and I was like, that's too close for comfort.
Oh, he was. I'd say he probably would be cool.
I'll start.
Well, he's been promoting his books and stuff. And...
Yeah. To be fair, has he been dead the whole time I've ever been coming to this country?
No, actually he already died. That's like when I went to Australia.
Oh, okay. I know you want to cover that case.
I don't. I think it's probably a boring case because it's just too much.
There's a lot going on. Honestly, I don't like unsolved cases.
And plus, there's too many books sold about it. Fucking Netflix series. There's a Disney series.
Anyway, we digress. Back to this case. That's everything I know on this case. It is such a heartbreaking case, and it's small children that should not have ever died, and it's so heartbreaking. And unfortunately, as much as there is a killer who is to blame for this, so much of it comes down to negligence. 3 little babies didn't deserve to die, and that's absolutely disturbing. Also, it may or may not be Gene, but if it is, how the fuck was he paroled after 2 years? Like, that's disturbing as hell. Don't parole people that commit terrible crimes in the first place. 2 years? That's taking the piss. There's 1 year per pregnant woman.
Yeah, sure. I know. You can't change that. But, like, I can't see Gene.
You don't see Gene being guilty. There are a lot of people now that don't see him as being guilty. It's always possible that he didn't do it. And like you said, he confessed quite freely to the other crimes and he pled not guilty to this one. It's really hard to tell. But also in saying that, there was not a similar crime to this in the preceding years, which you would feel if someone was to do something like this, it's not a one-time thing. You're a sick fucker that does this on the regular. And, you know, he died and this stopped.
Yeah, so look, that's one way to look at it.
But who knows? We don't have the answers. He never confessed. He was not found guilty. It's an unsolved case. So that is everything I have on this case. It is a very brutal case. It's quite horrible to hear. We probably will not be doing that many cases involving children. I feel like going forward, these ones really take a toll on me. There's a couple that I think are like stories that need to be shared and they're just like heartbreaking. Everyone's story is important and there's children who have stories that are important, but they are really hard cases to cover.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, so for the most part, we'll be focusing on adult cases.
Cool.
But no, that's everything we have on the Girl Scout murders. And we shall
see y'all very soon.
We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.